Hey everybody, Dr. Phil here. So this is going to be a video on research foundations and basically talking about the fundamentals of research. So let's start with where businesses collect information. So there's a lot of different ways. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. There's more ways in this, but some common sources could be analytics from the internet, things that they're able to download, get off of the websites, all the things that they track on the websites. ClickPass, for example. Conversations could be one, maybe more qualitative. Transactions, obviously, there's hopefully a lot of those, and observations. Um, Types of business intelligence. So, again, a lot of these government, regulatory, competitive, looking at what your competitors are doing, economic, cultural, social. Obviously, that's going to vary depending on where you are in the world. Technological, and of course, demographic. So, is research needed? Is research needed? And I wanted to talk about this because a lot of people, I think, misunderstand what research is. You saying, "Oh, hey, where's the nearest Panera Bread?" Well, let me research that. That's not technically considered research because that's just research is trying to find something out that people are not aware of, maybe refuting something that somebody's already done. That what I just described, picking up your phone and finding where the nearest Panera is not research. That would just be basically fact finding, right? Like it's already there. You just got to look it up. So in this example, customer complaint unfriendly. The high weight staff turnover, high industry turnover, high performance staff leaving. So yeah, that would indicate that there's an issue, right? There's a problem, and you might want to try to get to, find out why that is. So in this case, yeah, you would probably look at those, you could think of those as symptoms and say, yeah, we probably need to do some research on that. So problems created by data silos. So think of data silos as, companies where maybe like Department A isn't sharing data with Department B, or, Segment A isn't sharing with Segment B. It sounds silly, but it does happen. And then these are some of the things, some of the problems that can cause, right? Inaccessible data, incompatible platforms. System A doesn't know what System B is doing, so perhaps there's like duplication of effort. Inconsistent data fields, costly duplication of data that could be expensive. Data inconsistencies, and certainly faulty big picture vision, right? Because if the Department A or Segment A is collecting this data, Segment B is collecting this, and maybe they have different ideas about, they're both part of the same company, right? But they have different ideas about, where the company is going. So addressing data challenges, moving to a company-wide data infrastructure. This is where we've seen the likes of like ERP, enterprise resource planning systems, CRM, customer relationship management systems. Certainly dashboards have become a bigger thing. You know the old saying, I'm sure you do, a picture is worth a thousand words, right? So finding a way to quickly communicate just essential information, not everything, but just the essential information to key decision makers, is of course efficacious, right? Like it's a good thing, and it's going to help the business. So speaking of business dashboard, so if you want to define it more formally, we could say we could use it to aggregate and visualize. So aggregate, just think about like a sort of bigger picture, updated in real time in a lot of cases. In most cases, provide comparison with historical data, bypass data silos, and facilitate data blending. So again, just think about like the dashboard of your car. You don't have every single thing that's going on in the car, right? You just have the key things that you need to know, like speed, fuel level, etc. So let's talk a little about the research process. So the first thing to do is stage one, clarify the research question. So what's the problem? What are you trying to understand or figure out? Stage two is design the research, also called research design, and that could involve data collection, design, and sampling design. So not actually doing it, just designing like how are we going to collect the data, and then how are we going to sample? Because obviously we want to make sure that the sample is representative. Collect and prepare the data, analyze and interpret the data, and then report any insights and recommendations. So this is a pretty deliberately so a systematic process. This was first kind of laid down by the Arabs, you know, many years ago. So stages in the business research process. So the first thing we would do is clarify the research question, design the research, collect and prepare the data. By the that, people always think this one's not going to take long. This is usually, I will tell you as a researcher, this is usually the longest. stage, if you will, of the whole project. And then analyze and interpret data. That doesn't always take all that long. And then report insights and findings. And then, it's just sort of this repetitive process. So research versus analytics. So research is current problem focused. It collects new data. It can infuse new with historical data and hopefully can answer the why. Um, Data analytics, however, is used to understand the past. It looks at patterns in historical data and it's not generally able to answer the why question. So that's kind of like a key difference between, you know, research versus data analytics. The scientific method, as promulgated by the Arabs, some of the things you see here: direct observation, clearly defined variables. Think about the things in the study that can change, can vary. Clearly defined methods. That's important for what we call internal validity. Empirically testable, elimination of alternatives, statistical justification, and hopefully it's a self-correcting process. It may be an iterative process. It may repeat itself, but hopefully you are able to get to what you are wanting to find out. So the language of research. See, these are some of the terms that you often hear in research. So like constructs, for example, think of a construct as, you know, if I said it's warm, okay, what does that mean? We have to have a way to define what warm actually means, right? So you might say, well, warm is anything over, say, 25 degrees Celsius, or maybe, 77, 78, 75 Fahrenheit, right? I can say it's warm, but my warm and your warm might be different. Um, but the point is, saying something is warm, or oh, that's nice. Well, how do you measure that, right? It's kind of an idea of something that you're talking about, but maybe there's no kind of easy way to measure that. And we call those constructs. Um, so with that comes, we have to have things like variables. We have to have ways to measure the constructs. We have to have hypotheses. We'll talk about all these a little bit later. We have to have a theory. What is it that we think is going to happen? We probably have a model, some kind of model. Whenever you say model, everybody thinks, oh, it's going to be something more complicated. A lot of times, it's frankly not. It's a lot of times it's common sense. So let's continue. So the success of research is clearly conceptualized concepts and constructs. That's certainly true, and a shared understanding of concepts and constructs. So again, that's kind of why it's important to, I'm going to use another term here, operationalize the constructs. So if we say we're talking about temperature, then we're using Celsius. Somebody else might think, well, let's use Fahrenheit. Somebody else might say, let's use Kelvin for whatever reason. So as an example, how can we define the variable class level of students? When we all know how we do this, right? Freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. So that's an example of, you know, the class level in and of itself just tells you it's class level, right? It doesn't tell you what level they are. So universities around the world have come up with ways to, define, if you're less than, say, if you're between 60 to 89 credit hours, then you would be a junior, for example. Now, the variable, the property studied, that could be, as it says, could be an event, it could be a trait, could be an act, could be an attribute, and it could be a characteristic. So really think of like anything that varies has the potential to be studied. So dependent versus independent variables. So the dependent variable is expected to be affected by the independent variable. Think of it like it depends on the independent variable. So the independent is expected to affect the dependent variable. The independent variable is typically going to be the predictor. It would be the presumed cause, unless your research points out or sort of indicates otherwise. Could be a stimulus. It could be predicted from. Could be the antecedent, and it may be manipulated. The dependent variable is the criterion. It's the presumed effect. It's the response to the stimulus. And again, you sort of kind of matching these up, right? Like predicted from, predicted to, antecedent versus consequence, manipulated versus measured outcome. So types of variables, we've got moderating. Moderating, think of that as another or a second independent variable. There's a significant effect on the independent variable and dependent variable relationship. But you may not realize it's there, or maybe you do. Extraneous, it could affect the IV-DV relationship, and then intervening, it may affect the IV-DV relationship, but can't be observed. So relationships among the variable types. So if we look at the independent variable 4-day working week, and the dependent variable is productivity, then we're kind of saying, all right, is there a relationship between productivity? Is it, is it affected by people having a 4-day working week? And then, the moderating variable here, or mediating, is the worker's age. Because obviously as you get older, it may be harder to stay productive. So the introduction of a 4-day week, the independent variable, will lead to higher productivity, the dependent variable, especially among younger workers, which is the sort of the moderating variable, if you will. The switch to commission from a salary compensation system, that would be the IV, will lead to increased sales, which would be the DV per worker, especially more experienced workers, which again would be the MV. And another example, the loss of mining jobs, IV, leads to acceptance of higher risk behaviors to earn a family supporting income, which is the DV, particularly among those with a limited education, which is the MV. So you can kind of get an idea as to how, the directionality of this thing, if you will. So relationships among variable types. So again, we have our independent variable 4-day working week. We have our dependent variable productivity. We've now got the MV, worker's age, and then we now have a CFV. In this case, it's type of work. And then another one could also be weather. So yeah, I mean, and obviously there could be plenty more than this, right? These are just examples. So the switch to a commission compensation system, which is the IV, will lead to higher sales, DV, by increasing overall compensation, which is the IVV. A promotion campaign, IV, will increase savings activity, the DV, especially when free prizes are offered, which is the MV, but chiefly among smaller savers, and that's our control, EV. The results come from enhancing the motivation to save, which again would be the IVV. For extraneous variables, the EV, with new customers, which is the EV control, a switch to commission from a salary compensation system, which would be the IV, will lead to increased sales productivity, which is the DV per worker, especially among younger workers, which is the MV. Among residents with less than a high school education, the EV control, the loss of jobs, IV, leads to high risk behaviors, DV, especially due to the proximity of a high violence neighborhood, which is in this case, the MV. All right, let's talk now about hypotheses. So brand manager Jones, which would be a case, has a higher than average achievement motivation, which would be the variable. The generalization, brand managers in company Z, cases, now plural, have a higher than average achievement motivation, which would be the variable. Hypotheses could be different types of formats. Descriptive, American cities are experiencing budget difficulties due to a decline in manufacturing. Another example of a hypothesis could be questioning. Are American cities experiencing budget difficulties due to a decline in manufacturing? Descriptive, the life expectancy of airplane model 707 exceeds 16 years. The causal could be an increase in price causes sales to decrease. And correlational, people who eat dessert weigh more than those who don't. So the role of hypothesis is to really guide the direction of the study, to help you identify relevant facts, to suggest the most important research design, and to provide framework for organizing the resulting conclusions. Induction. So induction is an inferential leap from the evidence presented. So just because, somebody eats more cake, does that does that definitely mean that's what's causing them to be overweight? And of course the answer is no. Now deductions are only as good as the premises on which they are based. Right? So, they're not always great, they're not always good. Sometimes, and this is where at the beginning of any kind of research study, you got to pay very close attention to, what are you deducing? Because a lot of times people make, I would submit to you that people make faulty deductions. So deductive reasoning. The inner city household interviewing is especially difficult and expensive. This survey involves substantial inner city household interviewing, and the interviewing in this survey. So again, you got this idea of this deductive reasoning. There's different ways that you could say this to, try to sort of draw out the meaning, if you will. And inductive reasoning, why didn't sales increase during our promotional event? Well, regional retailers did not have sufficient stock to fill customer requests during the promotional period. A strike by employees prevented stock from arriving in time for promotion to be effective, and a hurricane closed retail outlets in the region for 10 days during the promotion. So why didn't sales increase? So fact one, we promote a product, but sales do not increase. So induction says why. So the hypothesis is the promotion was poorly executed. So the deduction is ineffective promotion will not increase sales. And corollary to that would be effective promotion will increase sales. So fact two, we run an effective promotion and sales increase. And then another example, Tracy's performance. So fact one, Tracy has a poor performance record. So the induction again says why. The hypothesis is that Tracy is lazy. So laziness results in tardiness, um, and then laziness results in fewer customer calls per day. Tracy is regularly late to work, and Tracy makes fewer calls per day than the average salesperson. So a checklist for a strong hypothesis. And this is again, this is at the very beginning of of the research. It should be adequate. It should be testable. That's super important because a lot of times people formulate they come up with a hypothesis and there's no way to really effectively test it. And it should be better than rivals. So rivals in the sense that has anybody already done this? If somebody's done research similar to this, what was their hypothesis? And then making sure that you're asking it in the right way, that's going to lead you to the right variables and hopefully the right methodology and conclusions. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in a future video.